Welcome to the M3 podcast. Your journey to movement, mindset, and medicine starts here.
Welcome back to another episode of the M3 podcast. I have my friend Ari Kantor here with me. She is somebody who I actually just had on the Ripple Effect retreat. We were in what was called a self-defense, but Krav Maga version of that. And I am so happy to have you on here because I wanted to talk about self-defense, safety, protection, and what it's like for, women in this world 2025 to protect themselves, not just from danger, but maybe even things that look like a long-term version of that. Maybe even relationships,
Definitely.
So, yeah, let's dive in. Welcome.
Yay. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. This is a great space, and I could talk about this forever, so definitely guide me if I get too far off. So Krav Maga or self-defense, there's so many different styles of self-defense, but Krav Maga specifically is a self-defense system that a lot of people think started in Israel, and it technically did, but it was created by this guy named Emi, and he was brought up during when the Nazis were coming to power.
Yeah.
And he actually had to defend his community from fascist gangs. And he was so good at defending his community that he was targeted by those gangs, and he had to flee to pre-state Israel. And that's where he showed his new techniques. He knew all these martial arts, but martial arts in general is sport-based. Like there's rules, there's regulations, you're in a ring. With Krav Maga specifically, it's more self-defense. You defend, you counterattack, and you make your escape. So it really started off with anything that works. Any martial art, any defense that works against multiple attackers and weapons, that's what Krav Maga is. As long as you make your escape as soon as possible, get out as soon as possible, that's the goal. And especially, there's controversy with Israel right now, but especially in the military, that's super crucial. It's a whole different tactic military-wise, but defending against multiple attackers' weapons, that's crucial for any type of defense, and even just self-defense for civilians.
And I felt like it was applied situation of like emergency, right? All the technique sometimes goes out the window.
For sure. It does.
And it's like, what do we instinctually do?
Yeah, exactly. Krav Maga is really based on like modifying your natural instinct. You don't want to learn a million different katas or techniques. You want to learn one defense that can work against multiple different attacks. And that's really what Krav Maga is about, because it really, like, for example, during the pandemic, I taught online, a class online. I teach at USD Krav Maga. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is going to be a false sense of security. Like, we're learning online, and all we learn is striking, combative. So just in general, whether it's an in-person or online class, I teach the foundation, which is combatives. And then from there, we add onto that, which is stress drills and more self-defense, like chokes, headlocks, weapons, multiple attackers. But the foundation combatives is, for me, that means long range, medium range, short range strikes. And if you know how and where to strike, you can improvise your way out of basically anything. That might sound a little bit privileged, but that is extreme. That, to me, that's what I teach. So using that in real life is so crucial. And with this online class during the pandemic, what I taught is, all I taught was kicks and palm strikes, which is basically punches. And years later, one of the students was working in Pacific Beach, and she was threatened, not, a static threat with a knife. The guy walked in closer, so he became in range, and she was able to reach him with a kick. Immediately, all we learned basically was a kick and run. That's the foundation. That's the first thing we learn, a kick and run. And as soon as he stepped in closer, she kicked and ran, closed the door, like locked the door behind her, and called the police. Oh, and the guy was still on the floor when the police came. And that was mind-blowing to hear, because that is the foundation. Like, that's the first thing we learn. And that kick and run can work against so many different scenarios.
And I've heard stories from you about, I would love for you to share them too, about being in the grocery store and what to be aware of. But maybe we can get into that chapter of things to look out for, or scenarios of what could happen. And not to say like, dun, 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 like
right.
bad things are always going to happen. But I had just sent you something about how the grocery store, I go to Sprouts probably twice a week, and I couldn't even fathom somebody crashing my car and trying to kidnap me and still wanting to be out and about driving by myself. Like it wouldn't cross my mind to even be alone again.
Yes. Those situations are so scary. Maybe you can explain just a little bit about that scenario that you sent me.
Yes.
And it happened right here in PB.
Yes.
And I'll talk a little bit more after you do a synopsis of that scenario. Like basically there were people targeting women in this store.
Yes.
And it seemed like they found someone that seemed like more of a target, that they just basically picked someone that they wanted to target. They bumped into their car almost like a crash. And then what happened next?
I just know that she had called the police over and over again and had asked for people to like screaming in her car to not leave her alone. And I believe she locked herself in her car. So thankfully she got to her car as well, because I could only imagine the way that they would lure you or try to get you when you're exiting. But it's just the questions that they were going around and asking. It was two sketchy guys. And usually people aren't alone when they're working in something like this.
Yeah, an evil person like usually has like an evil friend.
Yeah.
So even when we defend and we make our escape, we always want to prepare for worst case scenario. Like we're always preparing for worst case scenario. We're always trying to like, use environmental awareness. And it seems like the person, like there was another girl who was basically telling the story about this, right? And she said she noticed, like her intuition, like and her awareness picked up on just like sketchy, uncomfortable people. And she was able to deflect to a certain extent the situation. And I mean, you can't always deflect everything. But ideally for me, what I teach all about prevention. Like hopefully we never have to use anything physical. And prevention to me means intuition, body language, and voice. Like that is like so important because hopefully we never have to get into anything physical. And those three are crucial, which often sometimes can take some time and experience to really learn what that means for yourself. But that's really important. It seems like those women prevented even worse from happening by trusting their intuition, following their gut, locking the doors, using their voice, calling the police, doing what they could.
And doing what they could.
Yeah.
I love that you just said that. Everything in our willpower. The other thing is, you had mentioned earlier, I'm jumping all over the place, but I love it. You had mentioned earlier that you taught palm strikes and kicks, and I want to get into those too, because something that blew my mind was the palm strike versus making a fist.
Yes.
And I'm curious why that's so important for people, and little technique things that we should ask about that. But I'm jumping the gun because I want
There's so much.
Yes, I want to go back to this situation with this girl, because you had mentioned number one was our intuition, and all three of those steps I would love for you to just elaborate a little bit more on maybe what does it look like for us to listen to our intuition, for example. Yes.
I mean, we all have different perspectives with our own intuition, but for me, I did not know what my intuition was until a horrible situation happened. But I learned about my intuition through, really it started with me experiencing a lot of anxiety, and I just like overruled that. I was like, no, it's just anxiety, it's fine. But in general, intuition to me means following your gut, trusting your gut, trusting your higher self, like whatever resonates with you, your higher self, your gut feeling, your intuition. There's another word that I use, I'm blanking on that right now, but really the first thought, your subconscious, the first thought that comes to mind before your ego or your consciousness overrides. And I've been doing like a certification on NLP and overriding your subconscious limiting beliefs.
Yes.
And your subconscious is, it governs our whole life and our life experiences and how we act and things like that. And our intuition is so backed by our subconscious, and it's so important to tap into our intuition. So for me, like that's number one. And for me, that means the simplest way for me to explain that, if I just told you pink or black, like your subconscious already chose a color, like before your ego or your consciousness overrode that and was like, oh, well, I actually like black now or something like that. And that's just a chill example. Or if you're walking down the road and you see a group of people and your first thought is, I don't really want to pass them and like give them a fake smile or whatever. Your first thought is, maybe I want to cross the road, or maybe I just don't want to interact with them. But then your consciousness overrides that and it says, I know Krav Maga, I can do whatever I want, or they'll be fine. Other people pass that group of people. And it's not about being paranoid. It's more about being vigilant and trusting yourself. And it's not saying that, passing a certain group of people will cause a situation, but it's about trusting yourself. And once you start trusting yourself and listening to your gut and your intuition, that's when more gifts come to you. That's when more ease and peace comes to you. And one big quote in Krav Maga is, it's Hebrew, but it translates to, so that one may live in peace, so that one may walk in peace. And that's really, really, really important. Like, I actually have that tattooed on me because that's my motto. Like, that's my life goal. Like, this is my number one thing that I do all the time, that I will do forever. And I really care about people trusting their gut, using their voice, I call it staying puffy, or just like using nonverbal communication, which is body language, and staying tall. But so that one may walk in pieces. I feel like once you get little tidbits of how you can elevate yourself and your mindset, that creates a ripple effect.
Girl, yes.
So anyway, intuition, super crucial. I really believe like it takes some practice, but just every single second of the day can be intuition. Do I want to go down this road or this road? Just, even if it's not a life or death situation, doesn't matter. You can start trusting your intuition and just asking yourself that every moment of the day. If I ask you like grass or cement, your subconscious would already pick something from the start. If you ask yourself, do I really want to hang out with this person today or not? Like, it's not about bailing on the situation. It's about trusting yourself and figuring out what the best situation is for you in this moment.
Yes. That is intuition right there.
Yeah.
Now, remind me again the other two.
Yes. So intuition, then body language. Body language. I call that nonverbal communication, because everyone sees, body language is what we see from a person at any point when we notice someone. And that's basically like almost like a first impression. And body language is so important because, in general, people do forward-facing things. And in general, people have like slouched shoulders. That's just human nature, yes. What we do in life. But it's so important to override that by, I call it staying puffy. Like, you want to have more of an erect spine and like puff up a little bit. Kind of like how the stereotype of how men peacock and they like get chest to chest and get all macho with each other. Whether you're a guy or whoever, I really believe in staying puffy, or that power pose. Like, we talked a little bit about power pose, yes, and there's a TED Talk on that. And basically, the more puffy you are, the more you have increased confidence and decreased cortisol, so less stress. And the more slouchy you are, the less confidence, the more stress you have. In just 90 seconds, there was just a study, 90 seconds before an interview, they tested these levels, and it was just profound how much of a difference you can make for yourself by just changing your posture. And I believe that really relates to self-defense, because, when there's an evil person or something like that, they target people who look like a target, who look like a victim, who's someone who's looking down, who's unaware, who has like potentially a slouched posture. And I don't want to stereotype like the victim, like I don't really like that word, but you want to fake it till you make it. I like to say believe it till you become it, because you really want to puff up or have this more power pose to emulate confidence, basically, even if you don't feel like it. I'm sure like there's so many situations where I or other people have walked into a room and you just know that you're being stared at. It can feel very uncomfortable, but you're already in the room. We've all heard to take up space, but you do need to take up space. You're already in the room. You're already being seen. Stay puffy, take up space, believe it until you become it. And soon you will become that. You will emulate that. So that power pose is so important. And one example of that, which you mentioned earlier, is there was some research or an interview was done on a serial rapist in prison. Uh-huh. And I tell this story more of an example for myself, because I do happen to say sorry a lot, so I need to work on that.
Same. Let's work on it. Yes.
Yeah. So this predator was interviewed, and he said he targeted victims by going into their grocery store and bumping into women's carts. And the women who would basically give a fuck and say sorry and cower and, be submissive, he would target them outside the store. And the way you respond to a smaller situation could be a potential predictor to how you respond to an escalated situation. And that's why, like in Krav Maga training, what I love about Krav Maga, no matter where you go, I really believe in stress drills. Like, we can learn one thing, for example, a kick and run. in week we learn it very basic. Your eyes are open, it's chill. You master that kick and run. And then the next progression is more stressful. Now you are being spun, or now there's two people who are pushing you, and now you have to strike with that kick and run and then make your escape. And then the next progression is, okay, you mastered that drill. Now your eyes are closed, and then you have two opponents or one, and you're attacked safely in training, and then you have to respond. When you are attacked, your eyes open. It's the same drill, but originally, or it becomes more stressful because you have less proprioception, you have less senses aware, and therefore, it gets more stressful. And those stress drills are so crucial for real life, because real life, no one is immune to freeze response. And freeze response is, our central nervous system stress response. We go into fight, flight, or freeze, but there's actually fight, flight, freeze, fawn, and then fetal position. I only learned this recently. Very interesting.
I didn't know
that.
Yeah.
And I don't know too much about that, but I know that, freeze response, no one is immune to.
I would have thought fetal is freezing.
Yeah, fetal would be freezing. Yeah, it is a freeze, but in just down.
Yeah.
So your freeze response could just be staying where you are, or it could just be crouching down
full
and
surrender.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So overriding that freeze response, there's only so many things you can do with that, but safety, training safely for that, I really believe Krav Maga can help with that, because with progressional stress drills, that's how you can slowly override that freeze response. And I feel like I've been training since 2007. I'm so grateful that my dad bribed me into it. Like, I didn't ever want to do this, but now it's my absolute passion. And I'm just so excited. I'm just so grateful that I can share this with as many people as possible.
Oh.
Yeah. And it's just, I forgot where I was going with that, but
well, how did he even teach you? How did that come about?
My dad.
Yeah.
Well, my dad actually did Krav Maga before I was born. And then when I was born, he was just doing too much. So my parents just decided, okay, you got to stop something. So he stopped taking self-defense classes. And him and my uncle were about to be instructors. But it just took a lot of time and energy, and it's tough training.
Yes.
So when I turned 13, my dad enrolled me in classes, and he bribed me. He said, I have an animal addiction. So he said, you can ride horses for the summer if you take this self-defense class. And I looked older than I was. I was 13. This was 2007. And it was really scary. There was mostly men, mostly military, mostly law enforcement in this class. And it was really hardcore. But actually, after a couple months, I actually understood what was happening. And I was starting to helping teach the newer students. And that was so exhilarating. I have never felt so appreciated in my life. And I just kept on going. And thank God for my dad, because this is my number one thing. This is what got me into my whole life, like my whole career. So when I was 13, I started. Then at 15, I started helping out teaching kids classes. And then at 18, I was one of the youngest instructors in the US to be teaching Krav Maga. And
two law enforcement, two special forces, military,
yes.
How cool are you?
Yeah. It was definitely intimidating, but honestly, that has shaped, it has really shaped me, and that has really been a game changer for everything. And I'm really grateful to have this in my life. And really, not just training in Krav Maga, it really it helps me in every aspect of my life. I mean, just the preventative measures like intuition, voice, body language.
Let's talk about voice.
Yeah. Voice is so important. Like you do breath work, about the vagus nerve and breath work and breathing, and voice is number one. I mean, in many self-defense classes, they do a lot of screaming and just
practicing screaming. Can I just really quickly share with you?
Yes.
I have reoccurring nightmares of being kidnapped, which is something that I don't think I've ever shared on the podcast before. But I really, my biggest fear is being kidnapped. And then I have two others, which are like spiders and, all the good stuff. But the fear of that reoccurring dream is I'm stuck in a room, kind of like the movie Split, where he kidnaps the girls. And I think of that where I'm stuck with chains, or I can't get out. I'm banging on the door. I'm screaming. Nothing comes out. I feel like I've practiced this scream so many times and I just can't get it to come out. or if I ever really needed to, I'd be in so much shock that nothing would come out. So the power of voice and practicing voice and release of that even, there's probably a signal that you can send off hormonally through your brain that can get you to send out a voice of help.
Definitely. I mean, that is just number one for self-defense. I mean, when you cause some sort of distraction, like when you cause a scene or drama or something like that, I mean, it's not really a scene, but when you use your voice, no predator like wants to attract attention to themselves. So using your voice, even before a situation happens, is so crucial. Like, honestly, since I started doing physical training so young, I thought that I was invincible. I thought like I could totally hurt many people very much. But what I
humbling.
But what I didn't know was about intuition, and what I didn't know is about using my voice. And I just thought, I'm never gonna get myself in a situation because I know how to kill someone, and everything is good. But what I teach in my class is you will get yourself in a situation if you don't use your voice and if you don't trust your intuition. And I have totally gotten myself in situations that I'm like, how did I get here? I teach self-defense, like almost embarrassed, like why how did I get here? Because I know I should know what to do, and really I got here because I didn't trust my intuition, or I trusted it too late, or I thought it was my anxiety instead, and I didn't use my voice early enough. And that is number one. Like, really, even if someone's approaching you and you just feel uncomfortable, first you can just lie and say, hey, I have COVID, back up 6 feet. Or you could just be like, I feel uncomfortable, please create some space. And really just getting louder and louder from there. And also creating barriers, like environmental and situational awareness. You can't control where someone is, but you can control where you are in relation to the room to a certain extent. And you always want to create barriers, use your voice, trust your intuition, have puffy body language.
I'm blown away right now, just because we're going to go into the topic of what happens if it's not necessarily a Krav Maga situation where you are comfortable in your situation that you might be in, if it's a relationship or if it's a friendship or however you get taken advantage of in that moment. I can't even tell you how many friends have come to me and have been drugged and raped and have been taken advantage of, or even molested and sober, and they don't know how to speak up about and I've learned a lot about relationships being built on the integrity of trust, morals, and permission. And so we constantly are going to pull each other's boundaries and ask for permission and, see who's going to compromise. And I don't want to do this. I don't want to do that. Maybe I do want to do this. Do you? And so
right.
That also could be in the bedroom, out of the bedroom. That could be friendship of what's going beyond friendship. And I think about when it comes to permission, it comes down to who's going to put the safety of it first. That to me is the number one, is safety.
Definitely. There's so much with that. And I really, really, really care about consent. And I think that comes with communication and voice. Mm-hmm. And it really is kind of finding your own groove with that. But with consent, I feel like consent can be the simplest thing. Like, people think of consent as like, romantic, like intimate situations, but it can be as simple as like, hey, do you want my shoes on and off, like in your space? Are you comfortable, being on the inside or outside of the road? Like, do you like ice in your glass or not? Like, those are chill consent situations, like just asking and communication. But in intimate relationships or friendships, you never know what someone's feeling, and everyone has a different perspective on life, and everyone kind of grasps communication differently and perceives things differently. So communication is just key, and I feel like it does take some time to find that within and find what's comfortable on communicating and how you can communicate and just feel comfortable asking for permission, and then seeing how others respond to that. And how others respond to that is a really big indicator on how I feel like it's a good filter for how deeply you want to move into that potential friendship or relationship or things of that nature.
Even just listening to you speak right now as a podcast host and somebody who enjoys editing, and it's a perfection game for me. Listening to you speak right now, things that I pay attention to is if people are saying and ands a lot, if they're saying like a lot, if they're questioning what they're saying. When you are speaking and you have it's discernment, you have that clear, concise piece of information to just repeat the word until that thought process goes through. And so the way you speak, you already have that competency of, I have practiced this, I've used my voice, I'm aware of it, and if I need to get the words out, they'll come out.
Yes.
That's what I love.
Amen to that. Thank you for saying that. Thank you so much. One thing that I wanted to say, I don't want to say this as like worst case scenario, but some, shit happens and people get, people sometimes in situations where shit happens and you don't even know how it happened or why. And then you kind of start to question yourself and question, should I report this, or should I even talk to someone about this, or did I do something wrong? I'm embarrassed to even share this with my friends or family because maybe I'm going to be blamed for something that I didn't realize that I might have contributed to. And I guess what I want to say about that is, one, you did the best you possibly can in the moment. And that's what everyone's intention, no matter how it is everyone's really doing the best they possibly can in that current moment. And, when shit happens, it's oftentimes people don't necessarily want to go to the police. And I have some mixed feelings about that, reporting things, but I just want to say that filing a police report doesn't mean that you need to press charges. Like, I know this is kind of going to the extreme, but filing a police report is basically like tracking that situation. But again, it doesn't mean that the person that you're filing this about is going to be notified. And it also means that at least it's kind of like on record, so that if or when this happens with this potential predator or not, then they could get, at least it's on record, basically.
Yes.
And that's the number one thing that I want to say, because I've definitely been in situations where I didn't file a police report. I didn't even know what that meant. I didn't even know that I should have done that, and I could have actually gotten out of situations in the future, like legal situations, or situations with a similar person who popped up in the future, if I would have filed a police report. And that's what I really, really care about emphasizing, and that's why I teach Krav Maga so much. I teach all the physical things, but it's so much about strategy and so much about using your voice. And I basically just want to share things that I wish I had done for myself.
I was just going to say the same.
Yeah.
I'm glad that you're sharing this information. Thank you.
It's kind of deep and kind of, extreme, but it is really important. And I feel like a lot of people can relate to that.
Agreed. And then, as you were saying, I teach people how to get out of this situation. What does it look like for somebody who is so far deep into their relationship or their friendship or the abuse or the suffering in itself, that they need to figure out how to get out of it? Because a lot of people just don't want to leave. They're afraid to leave. They're too scared.
That's pretty deep. There's a lot of factors and layers of that, and I've definitely been there.
Yes.
So it kind of depends where you're coming from and where that mindset is. But as a person from the outside, really, you can just give your support, and that's really all you can do, rather than tell them and try to control. But if you're in that situation, I would say what's really important is to really trust your intuition. And to me, I found that, like, when I was in certain situations, what really saved me in particular, like during my lawsuit, I was in a 2-year lawsuit for this harassment situation. It was almost as worse than the actual incident. And I relied on tapping, like EFT tapping, like saved me. That's what saved me. And that's also what allowed me to really tap into myself, because there were so many people. I only had myself. Even my parents, like, they weren't that supportive. Like, they really were blaming me. And tapping really helped me harness myself and tap into my own intuition and come back to me, even if it was just for the moment, because everyone to a certain extent, everyone has those times, and things change, like things will change. But just trusting yourself, tapping into your intuition, I would say literally by tapping or by breath work, I feel like those are really, really, those are free resources that we have for ourselves. Mm-hmm. And I feel like if someone's open to that, I feel like those are number one. I mean, I
agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. EMT therapy, so nice.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that has really, really, really helped me. There's definitely more resources than that, but I feel like that's what I'm thinking. My intuition, that's where I'm going with that right now.
Yes. Uh-huh. And for anybody that's questioning, it's emotional freedom tapping therapy. So that it's, to me, an opportunity for my body to feel and process things that I can't come out and express in words right away.
Yes, exactly. One other thing I want to say is sometimes like a friend isn't available to vent, or sometimes we just don't feel safe venting yet to certain people. And I actually voice memo or record myself. Like sometimes like I was just fucking bawling and I didn't know who to talk to. And so I just recorded myself, in my low. And at a certain point, I actually, in that recording, at a certain point, I actually somehow came to my higher self. Like at a certain point, the script flipped and I was able to see myself from a different perspective. And I really actually believe in kind of like, it's almost like a vlog, but you keep for yourself. Mm-hmm. And that can really, one, you can see how far you've come because you will come past that. And two, I feel like in my perspective, in my experience, from sharing your low to yourself or to another person, from hearing yourself, literally by hearing yourself, you can flip the script and you can find a different perspective from that low.
I want to touch back on Krav Maga because this is a cool analogy. I've been wanting to study the Bible, the Torah, the Bhagavad Gita. I want to learn it all. Uh-huh. And so as I've been getting, I guess, biblical in a sense, is I see so much history, and war against Israel has been thousands of years, if not, and it's like, okay, refugees who were given back their land after the Nazis to now having to go back and fight for their land again. Mm-hmm. It's just constant history repeating itself. But I find it so interesting how this technique is very similar to a metaphorical positioning of where we are in the world with geographically, every place surrounding Israel is attacking Israel, and here they are just wanting to walk in peace.
Yes. Yes, of course there's different perspectives and opinions about that, but I really appreciate you saying
that.
That's
what
so true.
Education-wise, I'm just learning from my history here. This is what history is telling me.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, that's exactly true.
Everybody needs a home.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. I mean, I've been to Israel, and actually with Krav Maga, once you get to a high enough level, in my organization, there's many organizations, but in my organization, there's tens of thousands of students and instructors, and I'm one of the instructors. And once you get to a high enough level, you actually cannot test anywhere else other than in Israel. Like to test for for another level, you have to go to Israel and train. It's called a crash camp. You basically go for 5 days or more, and you relearn, you review everything you've ever learned up until your level, and then you take an exam, and at this high enough level, you are fighting. You at the end of the exam, you fight 100. You fight 100 people. You fight 100 of your other peers. So
wow.
I don't know where I got with that, but
I'm just thinking I have to fight everybody that I'm in class with. Yes. I just want to not be that person.
Yeah. No, I'm really excited for that. I'll actually.
I'm getting excited for it.
Yeah, it's really fun. I mean, of course, it sucks to get hurt, but I really love that stuff. So in 1 year, I'll be going to Israel, and any Jewish person can get their citizenship actually. So it's called making Aliyah, and so I'm actually gonna make Aliyah next year. I don't know if I said it right, but. I'm really excited for that because I'll spend 3 months in Israel. I'll learn more Krav Maga. Like I'll master Krav Maga even more. I'll test for a higher level, and I'm manifesting. I'm manifesting just being more connected with the headquarters there, and at some point just being being part of the global instructor team where I can travel and teach at different Krav Maga schools, and that's my vision.
That is such a great vision.
Thank you.
I want to just talk about some of the techniques that are a little bit different that you would see maybe in Muay Thai or boxing or traditional fighting, jiu-jitsu, right? And then how people would have Krav Maga as a self-defense, understanding the fist versus open palm, or the way to kick and strike or kick and run. And please teach us. What did you teach the people in PV?
Yes. So we always want to create space. We always want to make our escape as soon as possible. So the number one thing is to use your legs, because the legs are the longest limb of your body. We always want to create space, make our escape if we can. Now, when we kick and run, we always use our ball of foot or the top of our shoe because just injury prevention. And we're striking, it's like a rise and kick, almost like a seesaw, because we're always preparing for worst case scenario. So when you kick, it's a leg lift, like you leg lift, and as you lift, you lean back like a seesaw because we're preparing for worst case scenario. And worst case scenario is the person who we are defending against, they might have a weapon or something in their hand that we didn't see. So we want our organs out of the way as we kick. And then we're making our escape. So that's one example of just a kick and run technique, that the first thing that we learn. And then medium range is hands. So hands is punches and hammer strikes. So for punches, I'll call it a punch, but it's actually a palm strike where the base of your palm underneath the index finger strikes to the base of the nose. And in general, where we're striking is, in Krav Maga, we're striking to areas that cannot be strengthened in the gym. Like, so that no one is immune to where we strike. We strike to the groin, to the low abdomen, to the solar plexus where the wind gets knocked out of you, to the throat, the sternal notch area, the base of the nose and the eyes. There's definitely other target points, but I teach those centerline areas first and foremost because if you miss one, it will just you'll hit another area and that will cause damage. That will buy you a few moments of time in order to make your escape, if not more. Mm-hmm. So for the palm strikes, I'll call it a punch, but really I don't teach making a fist because when we make a fist, there's so much risk of injury involved. In general, if we were to make a fist, some people do it naturally. Like some students just naturally, instinctively, they'll make a fist. So I'll teach them how and I'll constantly just be making sure they're doing it correctly. But in general, when we make a fist, we want to contact with the two biggest knuckles. So we're contacting with a fist to the chin with your top two knuckles, the biggest knuckles. If you contact with the smaller knuckles, you're actually prone to a fracture. And it's so common in the martial arts world that it's called a boxer's fracture because in general, like boxing started bare knuckle boxing. It was no gloves, no hand wraps, just you're in the ring, bare knuckle. And so many of the pro fighters got fractures that it's now called a boxer's fracture. And that's why I don't really teach, making a fist because there's so much risk of injury. And especially because I teach many women, a lot of people have nails that are longer than their fingertips. Mm-hmm. And if you compress, to make a fist, you need to compress your nails, your fingertips into your palm. Mm-hmm. And it's a little bit uncomfortable, but that's how you want to be as compressed as possible. Yeah. And if you have long nails, you can't safely compress your hand enough. So when you punch with long nails, you might contact with the wrong knuckles because your fist isn't compressed enough. So what I teach is a palm strike. And for this palm strike, we strike to the base of the nose because no one is immune. Like anyone who's struck to the base of the nose, we strike to the base of the nose and then we rise, like you rise upon contact. And that forces the opponent's head to rise up. That allows you some space to strike to counterattack again if you need to. But that also lifts their head up so that you can buy some time so they can't necessarily see where you're running. Like they're either pushed back or their head is lifted up so that you can more efficiently, more optimized, make your escape.
I love the power strike too, because it could be somebody who's shorter to someone who's taller.
Yes, exactly. And another medium range strike. So arms are medium range. So we use palm strikes. We also use hammer punches. So one example is a lot of people think to put, can I have that pencil?
Yeah, of course.
A lot of people, I'll just mimic this as a pencil or a key. Like a lot of people are taught to have keys like in your hand when when you're alone walking to your car or something like that. And it's a nice thought, like to defend yourself with your keys, which is true. It's a good, use what you can to defend yourself. But we don't want to have our keys like in between our fingers or our knuckles, because this will just mimic, it's almost as if we have long nails. Like it's mimicking not compressing our fist enough. So if we punch like this, it will only hurt ourselves in a fist.
And you're saying like having the keys, let's say in the palm of our hand with the spiky pieces sticking out through the knuckles.
Yes, exactly. And the key is often short, so we could slash with it, but it's just not supported enough in our hand. So
then I'm thinking the guy or girl, whoever is attacking, but I'm thinking that the attacker is also taking your house keys and car keys, and you don't have anything now to go home with.
Exactly. Well, we can talk about weapons a little bit, because I believe, first of all, you are your first line of defense. Like I believe, you have to learn how to defend yourself, without a weapon, but thanks. But what we can also do is have, instead of using our keys in between our fingers, we can actually have our key like at the base of our fist. Yeah. So instead of using a punch with our keys, we can actually hammer, like literally as if we're hammering. We can hammer with an object or a tool or a water bottle or our phone. If we hammer at the base of our fist, that is a really effective, injury-free way to strike that's very effective, and it does a good amount of damage to buy you some time to make your escape.
Okay, I'm like, so open fists, feet, make sure that we're kicking in the places that are not adaptable, if that makes sense.
Yes, exactly. Vulnerable targets, groin, low abdomen, solar plexus, throat, eyes.
Love that. I love that. I'm just thinking in my head, yes, get them.
And at the same time, like this is going from 0 to 100. Like when we strike, this is going to piss off your opponent. So you have to have your escape route. You can't just strike and stay there. Like, and that's why training is so important. Stress drills are so important, because making your escape is so important. And how you train is how often you'll respond in real life. So I really try and emphasize like as perfect as possible training, because we want to, making our escape is number one.
Correct.
Yes.
And for anybody who, let's say, is maybe still timid or just new to self-defense, what would you suggest would be their first thing that they would do? If, maybe they're like, I don't know if kicking is the right thing or punching is the right thing. I'm not a real fighter, right? Mm-hmm. And so talking about words, you had taught us about the word no and how powerful saying no is, and just how simple.
Yes. No is obviously a complete sentence. Back off. No.
Yes.
And also just creating space. Again, you can't control where someone is, but you can control where you are in relation to other people in the room, for example. So I would say number one, like puffy power pose posture. Mm-hmm. 2, environmental awareness, like creating space. Like when I teach real estate agents, especially, I talk about finding barriers. Like there's going to be a dining room table or a chair, and being in between that is really important, especially if you feel a little bit uncomfortable, just so that you can have that barrier. But you can also use that chair or something like that as a tool of protection or an object to defend yourself with. But using your voice is also extremely important. Power pose, staying puffy, using your voice, especially for someone new. That is, I would say, getting comfortable with using your voice, even just like, I would say YouTubing affirmations, getting comfortable affirming yourself. I would say just with positive affirmations to start.
Advice.
Yeah. That's number one. I mean, for a long time, doing mirror work, like literally staring at myself in the mirror and just affirming myself, that was really hard for me for a really long time. It took a while. And I feel like for someone who might feel shy, that could be a really great start by just affirming themselves, just looking at your own eyes in the mirror and realizing, like looking at your eyes, looking through your soul, and having some gratitude for the journey that took you to this place that you are at now.
I love that so much. I really appreciate you being on this show and sharing about something that to me is M3 movement, mindset, medicine related, that this is a movement that involves a lot of mindset and can also not just be medicine, but life-saving to somebody in a very serious situation. So I appreciate you for just sharing all of this, but I do want to close it out with it's a two-part question. So behind me is a sign that says you can't always, you can't always stop the waves, but you can learn to surf. And so for me, it's really important to figure out things that maybe we can and can't control in life. And I think that related to self-defense, especially, or just situations where we need to stand up for ourselves, maybe you could give some context on things that you've learned over the years in technique, or even just specializing, that it would be important for somebody to take away with them on the things they can control and the things they can't.
Yes, I love that. Thanks for sharing that. And another example of that quote is like, control the controllables. Like, you can only control so much. So what you can control is what you can control, and just accept that and find some gratitude and relief in that. And I think maybe one example would be doing what you can. And that can mean for me, like, if we're talking about combatives, for example, like, there's always somewhere to strike. No one can defend all of these areas no opponent can defend all these areas at the same time. So for example, like, when I teach combatives and striking, that's the foundation. That's what I teach as a foundation. And I believe that that's how you can improvise your way out of anything. And so by controlling the controllables, or, doing what you can, by going from 0 to 100, or knowing how to go with some soft techniques, like how to push, or how to push someone away from you, or how to kind of leverage the situation to without having to exit the scenario, is really important. And in training, we learn hard techniques, which is striking, but also soft techniques, which is kind of using your voice, using your intuition, pushing. Like, it's more of a calmer situation where you can still stay in the room, but you're giving your opponent a warning, like, hey, back off.
Yes.
So I would say that is about more like, you can't stop the waves, but you can control the surf. So kind of controlling the situation to your best ability. Thank you.
Love that. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you so much. This is wonderful.
Thank you for joining me on another episode as we learned and explored all things movement, mindset, and medicine. My mission with each episode is to provide you with the tools and techniques that will help you thrive, achieve stability in your health, and support your personal development in tune with the world around us. If you found value in this episode, please share it with someone who would benefit from these insights. Don't forget to rate and review the podcast, as your feedback helps us reach more people and improve our content to better serve you. For more information about my upcoming events, the unique M3 method coaching experience, and opportunities to further connect, visit my website at www.breannadanielle.co. Now let's make massive ripple affecting waves together.